Hello, class. This is the last lecture, and I'm actually just tying up a couple loose ends. We've made it through basically everything that we're supposed to make it through in a regular semester. I've been getting some of your papers back. They've been really good. If you haven't gotten those in yet, make sure you get them in. I'm being very lenient on due dates right now, so get those in. Anyway, wanted to finish up just discussing a couple cases dealing with the Establishment Clause that we didn't have the time to get to during the regular school year, and that the new edition of the book cuts out, and so I thought it'd be a good time to do that. Okay, so Natalie.
Yes.
My daughter is here.
Hello.
She wanted to say hello. She also wanted to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
So she's been a good proxy for the class. So, anyway, Natalie, what's your understanding of the Establishment Clause?
None.
We talked about it in the other class.
I don't remember it.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion.
Oh, yeah, never mind.
Okay.
I remember it now.
Okay, now I remember it. So, are your tax dollars supposed to be used to go support a religion that you do not believe in?
No.
No. Why not?
Because I don't want to support something that I don't believe in or agree with, and the government shouldn't. The whole reason that we kind of have government is separation of church and state. You kind of stay out of religious matters because when the government gets involved with religion, it doesn't end well a lot of the time.
Right. Doesn't end well for government and doesn't end well for religion.
No.
Right? Just keep the two separate. Exactly. All right. Now, taxing us and then turn right around and giving it to a religion, I mean, that'd be too direct. That's too obvious, right?
Yeah.
So the question comes up, what about situations where tax dollars are being used to go help people in religious settings or something like that, right? Okay. So this came up in a 1985 case called Aguilar versus Felton. And what happened in this case was New York was allowing Title I teachers to go into private religious schools to deliver Title I services to eligible students. Right?
Mm.
Okay, so who pays the salary of Title I employees?
The federal government.
Well, the government, the state.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I was told not to throw around the term the government.
Okay.
Last lecture.
Actually, in this context, we can. So the tax dollars come from individual taxpayers, right?
Yes, that's how taxes work.
That's how taxes work. And then it goes to the government.
Yes.
And then the government is paying the salaries of Title I employees.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then these Title I employees go into a school setting, private religious school,
Yes.
and deliver Title I services. So, are your tax dollars being used to help a child in a religious school receive instruction?
Well, yeah.
That's what the court said in 1985, and it was close, 5-4, right? Because keep in mind, the Title I teachers were there to help at-risk kids. You know, they're doing things like reading skills, right?
Yeah.
They're not really indoctrinating kids in particular religious beliefs, right?
Yeah.
But the court said unconstitutional, right? Now, why do you think they said that?
Why do I think they said that? Because it was a government funded thing, and it was in a private religious school, and the two don't really combine.
The two don't mix, exactly, right? As we saw before in earlier cases, you weren't there for these discussions, Natalie.
Oh, without.
But when it came to ecclesiastical officials going into public schools to deliver services, the court said, can't do that, right?
Yeah.
So it's saying a similar thing here. You can't have public employees go into religious schools.
Yeah, you have to pick
right?
one.
Yeah, pick one, exactly. But like I said, it was 5-4. And one of the reasons why the majority felt that it was inappropriate was that, and I don't mean to offend anyone who is a Title I employee right now. I don't mean to offend anyone. If anyone in the real world is looking at this more than my class, right? But do Title I employees usually have a high or low level of professionalism compared to other educators?
I believe
Low, exactly. Have you ever had any Title I educators at your schools or knew who they were?
Not really that I know of. They were probably around, but I really didn't focus on that. I wasn't really in.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, okay, so you haven't had any direct experience with it. Well, the thing is, here's the thing. Just kind of the reputation is that there is not a high level of professionalism around Title I employees compared to other educators, right? Who sometimes have to have at least a master's degree, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of states in order to teach, right? And so the concern was when these Title I instructors got into a religious school, were they going to be able to maintain their level of professionalism, or would they succumb to the religious environment and maybe start providing religious instruction that was inappropriate?
I do not know.
Do not know. Okay. So the thing is, if we wanted to make sure that they didn't start providing religious instruction, Abraham had one sheep.
Yeah.
And then Abraham gets another sheep. Now how many sheep does Abraham have?
Yeah.
2. 2 sheep. Abraham has 2 sheep. Right? So, in order to make sure that Title I teachers didn't succumb to the religious setting, what would be required?
I do not know.
Monitoring. Constant monitoring.
But that takes so much work.
That takes so much work. Will that lead to an excessive government entanglement with religion?
Yes.
Yes, and that's part of the lemon test, right?
The lemon test.
The lemon test.
Nothing to do with lemons, disappointingly enough.
Yep, there you go. So the court said low level of professionalism to make sure that they adhered to their mission. There'd have to be a high level of monitoring, and that would lead to an excessive government entanglement with religion. And so this arrangement is unconstitutional. Right?
Yep.
What do you think about that ruling? Good ruling, bad ruling?
Makes sense, kind of.
Kind of. Who was eligible for the Title I services? The religion or the child?
The child.
The child. And so some people had a problem with the ruling because they said the child was eligible for the aid and should be able to receive it regardless of where they are at the time.
Yeah.
Right? Another concern is, what next? You don't let kids that go to private schools, private religious schools, go to the public library?
Right.
Well, you know what I mean?
Well, that's quite a step up.
Well, you know what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
If you won't let them receive Title I services, because they're paid for at taxpayer expense. Well, public libraries are paid for at taxpayer expense. Are you not going to let them have access to that too? Are they on their own there too? So those were kind of the arguments that critics of the decision were making. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay, so one of the reasons I wanted to cover this is a lot of people view this as kind of the high water mark of the court taking separationist positions, right?
Yes.
Because this was 85, and in 86, Rehnquist becomes Chief Justice. Scalia's added to the court.
Oh, Scalia.
Yeah. And a couple years after that, Kennedy's added to the court. Both of them are Catholics. Catholics support religious instruction in general, right? It's a big part of their religion. So anyway, you had changes in court personnel, and time passed. And so, Nat, can you please stop?
Okay.
So time passed, and so a couple decisions occurred in the interim. First, there was a case that reached the court dealing with a blind student that wanted to attend a religious institution, and got government assistance because he was blind, and he wanted to use that government assistance to attend a religious institution. Case reached the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that's just fine.
Yeah.
Because it's the student that's eligible for the aid.
Yeah.
And if the student then chooses to direct that aid to a religious institution, then that's the result of genuine independent choice.
Yeah.
And it's not like the state was coercing him into going there or endorsing religion. It was a result of genuine independent choice.
Yeah.
So that case occurred. Then another case occurred dealing with a deaf student who wanted to go to a religious institution. And the deaf student was eligible to have an interpreter.
Yeah.
With the student. Okay? So that case reached the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that arrangement is just fine. Right?
Yeah.
Who's eligible for the aid, the student or the school?
Student.
Student. Did the student choose to go to the religious school out of genuine independent choice?
Yes.
Was he coerced into going to the religious school?
No, he was not.
No. Was the state endorsing going to a religious school?
Nope.
Nope. Genuine independent choice. And so the court said basically the aid follows the student in both of those situations.
Yes.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what do you know about sign language interpreters? High or low level of professionalism?
High.
What makes you say that?
Well, they have to go to quite a lot of schooling, and they're very dedicated to what they do.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And is it part of their responsibility to translate as directly as possible?
Yes.
Yeah. They're not supposed to let their own values and attitudes influence how they translate things. They're supposed to translate things as directly as possible for the students. Yeah. Right? So there's a high level of professionalism. Okay? All right. So you had those two cases that were decided. Got it?
Yes.
In the interim. Okay. Next, to comply with the court's ruling in Aguilar versus Felton, what happened was New York bought a bunch of Title I vans. And they would drive these vans close to the private schools.
Yeah.
And then the students that were eligible for Title I services would leave the religious schools, go into the Title I vans,
Yeah.
receive Title I services,
Yes.
and then go back to their religious school. How much money do you think that costs the state of New York? A lot or a little?
A lot.
That costs a lot of money, right? Also, are you going to have a fair amount of coordination there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Billy, you ready to go? Yes,
Yep.
Billy is ready to go. We're 20 minutes out.
Exactly. Can you? Oh, good. All right. Sorry. Yeah, and so there's gonna have to be a high level of coordination. It costs a lot of money, and so the state of New York said, well, there were those 2 cases in the interim.
Yeah.
That allowed the aid to follow the child. So let's try this again.
Oh.
Yeah, just 12 years later. So the state decided to give it another shot in Agostini versus Felton. And keep in mind, there'd been those 2 cases, but there had also been a change in court personnel.
Yes.
Right? And that's probably that's going to be huge in this case. Okay, so the case went back to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, given those recent cases,
Yes.
and given how much money this has cost the state of New York, we're going to say that it's okay for these Title I teachers to go into a private religious school and deliver Title I services. So they overturned their previous ruling, which was just 12 years earlier. It was 97. Okay. What do you think? Good ruling, bad ruling?
I mean, I honestly think that a child's education is very important, and if it takes certain things to make that happen, then that is okay. But also, I think they're also kind of contradicting themselves. And as when you're talking about Kennedy and Scalia were both Catholic, I'm going to bet they went to a Catholic private school at some point when they were younger. And that influences your opinion. And the court is only 9 people.
Yeah.
And 2 of you are really in favor of this because that's what you grew up with.
Yeah.
Then there's going to be some sort of pretty heavy bias there, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, so the dissent was not pleased.
Yeah.
And they said, look, we know the earlier ruling was tough.
Yeah.
But the aid program crossed a line, right?
Yeah.
And constitutional lines are the price we pay for constitutional government, right? If you want your kid to receive Title I services, what can you do?
Send them to a public school.
Send them to a public school, right? And so the majority says sorry. You know, if you want them to receive Title I services, then send them to a public school. And they'll be eligible for Title I services. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Mm-hmm. You can't put your kid in a religious school and then also expect them to receive additional support from the state. Right? Sorry, can't happen. Right?
Yeah.
Then the court talked about professionalism, right? And they said that concern hasn't gone away. You cite the example of the deaf student who's entitled to have an interpreter. Well, interpreters have a high level of professionalism.
Yeah.
They're not going to go into a religious setting and have that start affecting how they sign,
Yeah.
right? And so they said that earlier precedent has no bearing on the current situation. Title I teachers would still need a lot of monitoring, and that would lead to an excessive government entanglement with religion.
Yeah.
Right? So that's not really a precedent that has much bearing on the current situation. Right? Then they, the whole, it's costing New York tons of money to abide by the earlier ruling in Aguilar versus Felton. The court said we knew it was going to cost a lot of money when we did it, and that's not a sufficient excuse. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they also said another problem with the whole, we've also allowed some aid programs where like the state donates textbooks and things like that to public schools.
Yeah.
They said, a textbook just has to be inspected once.
Yeah.
To know what's in it.
Yeah.
Whereas a teacher requires monitoring every day if you want to make sure that they're not teaching religious beliefs inappropriately.
Yeah.
Public employees teaching religious beliefs.
Hmm.
So.
Pretty sure that happens even in the public school system.
Yeah, it does here in Alabama, but that's life. Well, students, it has been a pleasure. Make sure you get your assignments in. Take care and have a wonderful summer.
Goodbye.
And that was goodbye from Nellie too.